Well, my dear friends, today I'm going to do something unorthodox, at least for me. First, I'm recording this on Zoom, and if the recording works out, it'll be a absolute miracle because I'm not really sure what I'm doing. Secondly, I'm going to play for you a beautiful tune. It's called a Sukkelah, Klaina. It's an old Yiddish tune that's set to the words of a poem called a Sukkelah, Klaina. Why am I going to play this tune for you? I'll play it in a few moments. The reason is because this tune, firstly, holds great sentimental value for me. My father, Olav Shalom, grew up in Seattle, Washington, and one of his rebbeim was Rabbi Alter Paplak. And when my father came to New York to study Yeshiva University when he was a young man, he was about 18 years old in the early 1940s, Rabbi Paplak had moved to Borough Park, and Rabbi Paplak invited my father to come to his sukkah one night of Sukkos. And in the sukkah was, at the same time, was my mother, Aleh Shalom. And that is where my father and mother met, in the sukkah of Rabbi Paplak. Rabbi Paplak is the grandfather of Rabbi Golden, Shmuel Golden from Englewood, now in Eretz Yisrael. So my father met my mother in that sukkah, and when they were in the sukkah, my father heard for the first time this nigun, a Sukkelah, a Klaina. And my father loved to sing this nigun. It had great sentimental value for him because it reminded him of the first meeting with my father and mother, but also because the nigun has the poem that the nigun is set to carries profound meaning. And my father was a very emotional person with very strong religious feelings, and he understood the depth of the meaning of the poem. And I want to share with you the nigun. And before I do so, I'm going to explain what I believe my father saw in the poem and why it was so meaningful to him, why it's meaningful to me as well. This tune is a Yiddish tune. It's set to the words of a poem written by Avraham Raisin, who was born in Belarus in 1876. He emigrated to America in the early 1900s. He died in New York in 1953. To the best of my knowledge, Avraham Raisin was not a Torah observant person, but nonetheless, as were many of the Yiddish writers and poets of yesteryear, they grew up in an environment that was so strongly saturated with Jewish values that even if they were not personally observant in their own in their own life, but nonetheless in their poetry or their literature, Jewish values were strongly reflected. And this poem that Avraham Raisin wrote, which is called a Sukkelah, a Klaina, that projects a very powerful theme that's relevant to the Yontif of Sukkos, and it's particularly relevant to our own situation today in the year 2021. The poem is about a sukkah that a person builds, and it's a shabby sukkah, and he puts on some schach on top of the sukkah, and it's not very strong. And then he goes into the sukkah at night to make kiddush, and while he's making kiddush, the wind blows, and the sukkah shakes, and the wind is about to blow out the candle, and somehow, miraculously, the candle survives the wind. And then this man's daughter comes in to serve the first course of the meal, and she tells her father, the sukkah is going to fall down. And he tells her, don't worry, the sukkah will not fall down because the sukkah has already survived for 2,000 years. It's 2,000 years and the sukkah is still standing. What did Avraham Raisin mean by that the sukkah survived for 2,000 years? What he was saying is that the sukkah represents Jewish survival. A sukkah is, when we went out of Mitzrayim, God protected the Jewish people in Sukkos. Sukkos Shafti es B'nai Yisrael. Sukkah is a symbol of shmira, of protection. HaKadosh Baruch Hu protected the Jewish people by building for them or creating for them these sukkos that were in the desert, and that's what protected the Jewish people. The yontif of Sukkos is a yontif of Shmira. That is a tremendous irony, because you would think if you want to do something symbolic to reflect protection, Shmira, you would build something out of steel or out of concrete. Instead, we build the Sukkos out of flimsy material. The schach is not even allowed to be attached to the roof. So very often the schach just blows away if there's a strong wind. And many a times the Sukkos fall down because they're so flimsy. So what kind of symbol of protection is the sukkah if it's so flimsy? That's the tremendous irony of the sukkah. And the answer is because the real protection of the sukkah is not the walls of the sukkah. The real protection is not the roof. The protection of the sukkah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu who hovers above the sukkah. And it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who protected the Jewish people. And if you're not certain that that's the case, if you might think that the Jewish people managed to protect themselves in other ways through the constructions of mighty palaces and fortresses, etc., all you have to do is look at Jewish history. Over the past 2,000 years, the Jews have been wandering in Gullus from one country to another. They hardly ever stayed in a country more than a few decades. There were so many expulsions that they endured, and there was no nation that was more fragile and more insecure than the Jewish nation. They were despised by the non-Jews. There was religious persecutions. There was the crusades and pogroms and inquisitions and all sorts of terrible the periods of Jewish history. And nonetheless, the Jewish people miraculously survived. They didn't have their own country. They were wandering from one place to another, but they survived. And the mystery is other nations that were much stronger and more stable and secure, they disappeared. But the Jewish people, in spite of the fact that they didn't even have a home of their own, they were expelled from Eretz Yisrael, nonetheless, they managed to survive throughout the entire Gullus. How did that happen? And the answer is that the survival of the Jewish people is not based on the walls and the ceiling of the building in which they're residing. It's based on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the ultimate protector of the Jewish people. Like we say in davening, Shomer Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the protector of the Jewish people. And if a person is protected by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he doesn't need the physical protection of the walls and the ceiling. That's irrelevant. He's protected by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And to build a sukkah, if we would build it in a way that it's sturdy and strong, then it would detract from the message of Sukkos, which is that God is the one that protects the Jewish people. And therefore, to Avram Raisin, the sukkah represents the protection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that endured during the 2,000 years of Gullus. And that even though the state of the Jew throughout that period seemed to be so precarious and unstable and uncertain, nonetheless, the sukkah survived. The protection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu survived with all the winds and all the traumas and all the episodes for 2,000 years, because ultimately it was HaKadosh Baruch Hu who stood above the Jewish people, watching them and protecting them. So that's the content of this poem. It's set to a tune. I searched the internet. I could not find who wrote the tune. If anybody knows, please let me know. It's a very beautiful tune. So, but the tune is moving and the words are moving. And the message is particularly relevant to us today, because we, again, are living in a time of tremendous instability and insecurity. Just a year ago, the Jewish people in America, we were, if you compare our situation to other periods of the Gullus, the last 2,000 years, we were like the most secure position in all of Jewish history. Now, we were in America, we were accepted, and we had opportunity. It was the land of golden opportunity, and we were very successful. So we thought we had it made here in America. And now, in a short period of time, everything has turned upside down. And our position here is just topsy-turvy. The Jewish people are in a very insecure position with all the turmoil and unrest that's taking place. And we don't really know where things will go from here. And that's why the Yontif of Sukkos is an enormously meaningful Yontif, as it speaks to our condition, because Sukkos speaks about the protection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the Jewish people when they're wandering and dwelling in huts, which really do not do very much in terms of protection, but nonetheless they were protected because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the ultimate protection of Klal Yisrael. So now let me share with you, if I could do this the right way. First, I'm going to put up on Screenshare the words to this beautiful nigun. If this will work out, here we go. Okay, and now I'm going to make myself a spotlight so I could show you where the nigun is. And now, if I could do this part well, then I'm really going to be in good shape. I'm going to turn on the nigun, and as the nigun plays, I'm going to point. So the nigun is about 4 minutes. I'm going to point my highlighter here at the place on the page. The words are a little bit different than on this nigun. This nigun was sung by Murray Goldwag. There's a few different people that sing this nigun. He's my favorite singer of this nigun, and here it is, and I'll share it with you.
Sukkelah, Klaina, mit breitele Gemeine, hab ich mir in Sukkelah gemacht, bedeckte mit Dach, mit a bissel Schach, sitz ich mir in Sukkelah Nacht, bedeckte mit Dach, mit a bissel Schach.
I'm pausing for a moment. I forgot to say that the Yiddish is on the left side and the English translation is on the right side. So I'm going to have the pointer on the right side. If you know Yiddish, it's much more beautiful in the original, but even if you don't understand Yiddish, you could follow it on the English side. If anybody would like the words or would like to know the link for this nigun, I'll be happy to share it with you. You could email me at luban@ou.org and I'll send it to you. But here, okay, let's go back to the nigun.
Wind kalten, bloß durch die Spalten, es löschen sich die Lichterlich viel. Es ist mir achidisch, wenn ich mach mir Kiddisch und die Lichter, sie brennen ganz still. Es ist mir achidisch, wenn ich mach mir Kiddisch und die Lichter, sie brennen ganz still. Beim ersten Gericht mit der bloßen Gesicht trag mir mein Tochter allein, sie stellt sich weg und sagt mit groß Schreck, Taten Judi, so gefall bald ein. Sie stellt sich weg und sagt mit groß Schreck, Taten Judi, so gefall bald ein. Nicht kein Narr, hab nicht kein Zare, soll dir die Sukke nicht unbang. Es ist schon gar, bald 2000 Jahr, und die Sukkele, sie steht noch ganz lang. Es ist schon gar, bald 2000 Jahr, Sukkelah, sie steht noch ganz lang. Sei nicht kein Narr, hab nicht kein Zar, soll dir die Sukkah nicht tun bang. Es ist schon gehore, bald 2000 Jahr, und die Sukkelah, sie steht noch ganz lang. Es ist schon gehore, bald 2000 Jahr, und die Sukkelah, sie steht noch ganz lang.
I'll tell you, every time I hear the again, I'm just so moved by it. And the punchline, which really gets you, is the last paragraph, where it says, the father tells the daughter, don't let the sukkah give you any grief. It is already, this is showing Gar, about 2000 years. It's almost 2000 years. When the Sukkelah and the sukkah sie steht, she's still standing, nach ganz, for not ganz long, still standing all this time. And that is such a powerful message for us during the Yontif of Sukkos. I hope you'll share it with your family. The sukkah that we sit in is not a sukkah that we just put up the sukkah this year, and that's the whole history of the sukkah. The sukkah has been with us for 2,000 years, and that's the shmirah, the protection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu stands above our sukkah. The Shekhinah is with us in the sukkah. And even though there are, in every generation, there are new powerful winds that threaten to topple the sukkah and to destroy the Jewish people, such as there are today. There's such a chaos in society, and the Jews are threatened by it. But the message again is, it's about 2000 years, it's almost 2000 years, when the Sukkelah, sie steht noch ganz lang, and the sukkah, she's standing all this time. Okay, I'm now going to try to end this video. That's already a separate challenge for me, how to do that. So you could turn it off already, because I have no idea how to. Here we go. Okay, thank you very much for listening. And okay, this is the end.